All right, coming up next is Tom White will be joining us. So, and I think I see him popping onto the screen now. There he is. Hi, Tom.
Deb, it's great to see you. Great program.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. Always good to see you. And so for our audience, I'm really pleased to welcome my friend from the Carolinas, because for those that who don't know, I actually live in South Carolina, but have done a lot of work up in your neck of the woods too, Tom. And so we've crossed paths many times before. So for those of you who don't know Tom is the director of the Economic Development Partnership. Tom leads economic development initiatives for NC State, serving as the liaison to local, regional, and state economic and workforce development entities. And these strategic partnerships result in new jobs and capital investment for North Carolina, as well as meaningful opportunities for students and faculty. So prior to joining NC State, Tom served as the director of the North Carolina Department of Commerce Division of Employment and Training, and was also president and CEO of the Greater Durham Chamber of Commerce. Tom, you're also a longtime board member of the Capital Area Workforce Development Board. Am I correct? You're still seated on that board, which is where I met you. Yeah, it's where I've met you. Tom's a graduate of Duke University and also received his Master's of Public Affairs from NC State. Tom, first, I'd like to congratulate you on the great work you are doing at NC State Economic Development Partnerships. And as part of the Polton Innovation Center, I understand over 5 million jobs according to the website and 1.25 billion capital investment created across North Carolina in 2019 alone. So that's incredible. And so really delighted to have you here today, Tom. There's so much we could talk about over the next 25 minutes. But to start with, you lead efforts to connect North Carolina State University with local, regional, and state economic and workforce development organizations. Tom, how do you approach these organizations and get these strong partnerships moving?
Well, first of all, Deb, congratulations to you and Mark and my great long-term friend Bob Knight on your new name and the fantastic work you're doing at the conference. Hats off to Ron Painter and Jan and Melanie and the team, because this has been fantastic. I'm here in Raleigh, and I have to pay tribute to Pat Sturdivant, the aforementioned Pat Sturdivant. Pat and I actually met about 40 years ago at Durham Technical Community College when she was doing her postgraduate internship from NCA&T over in Greensboro. So I've been blessed with an opportunity to learn from the best in Pat Sturdivant. The reason that we're successful, I think, in economic development is a tribute to some of the things that Jill and Ann were alluding to. The fact that we've had political leadership that believes in our university system, believes in our community college system, and our K-12 system, and critically importantly today, early childhood education. Jim Hunt, Smart Start. So we're not going to come out of COVID-19 strong unless we can make sure that the underpinning and that undergirding, the infrastructure is available. So we're here in the Research Triangle Park. We're 60 years old as an economic development region. And not only do we have 3 great Research One institutions where I work, NC State, our flagship university over at Chapel Hill, UNC Chapel Hill, and Duke University, but also a wonderful historically black college as part of the UNC system, North Carolina Central University, and then some private institutions in Raleigh like Shaw University, St. Aug's, and we're all in it together. So the collaboration rules the day.
That's terrific. It really is a beautiful area and just amazing. So tell us why so many biotech and pharmaceutical companies expand or relocate to North Carolina's Research Triangle. I think you already started to allude to that, but tell us how you keep attracting all that cool stuff.
You trained me well, gave me some great questions, but I didn't follow the script. But back in the 1960s, actually, Burroughs Wellcome came down from Tuckahoe, New York in 1969 and established a strong presence in that aforementioned Research Triangle Park. And then in the 1970s, a little company called Glaxo that no one had heard of came into another part of RTP. And with a small investment, they bought 50 acres of land, built a nice 100,000 square foot facility. And both these enterprises wound up merging. A product called Zantac became one of the first billion-dollar drugs. And it's really precipitated from that initial investment. So it begs the question, why did they come here initially? Well, two great academic health centers, Carolina and Duke. We've put a lot of investment in our tobacco settlement money, the Golden Leaf Foundation at NC State. We're the largest recipient of that fund. It's about $1 billion. They've given out about $500 million to institutions, and their goal or mission is to create good jobs at good wages, which was Governor Hunt's mantra for his 4 terms. On our campus, we have a biomanufacturing training and education center. It's a 50,000 square foot building where lots of companies send their personnel to learn best practices in producing things like vaccines. So it could be a COVID-19 vaccine. Today, a company in northern Durham in Trayburn makes measles, mumps, rubella, and chickenpox vaccine. So our region knows how to do this. You have to develop the vaccine, you have to produce it, you have to distribute it. So that's one salient example. Another one I hasten to add is North Carolina Central's BRIGHT program, which again is financed from the Golden Leaf Foundation, the tobacco settlement money. And then the BioWorks network is the community colleges. So 58 community colleges, about half of them have really outstanding life sciences programs, and they try to connect with the secondary schools to make sure. And this is kind of what Jill was alluding to. How do you make societal benefit? How do you actually lift all boats? Well, you have to start early. You have to expose people. We were a tobacco, textile, furniture state for a long time, for most of our history, for a couple centuries, right? So that transition has been fraught with peril unless you can get the educational capabilities to translate that. And our workforce boards, obviously, what's the linchpin for all that? The workforce boards. So make sure your sector strategies are relevant. So.
Absolutely. And, I think, Tom, you and I have talked about this before, because every time I talk to you, it takes me back to where I kind of started in this industry as a workforce board director in upstate New York, Ithaca, New York, to be exact, where we had Cornell University and Ithaca College. And I felt like, it was really exciting to be part of that network where you were working with the university's research and development arms and economic development partners, along with state and local economic development organizations, government officials, workforce development, community organizations. We that do this work understand it doesn't just happen accidentally. It's really about building real partnerships committed to common goals. So it always jazzes me to see the incredible work that you do and others that you work with in the region. So you've been involved for several years now. One of the things I remember you shared with me early on was a deep passion around the Backpacks to Briefcases initiative in your area. You want to share a little bit about that?
Oh thanks. Pat Sturdivant actually trademarked that. If you can believe it, Deb, it was about 12 years ago. It was in the Great Recession when we were starting to see a lot of college graduates come to our job and career centers at the time. And Pat was saying, I'm not sure that we've had enough familiarity with that constituency or that cohort to serve them effectively. But obviously, there's been a lot of obstacles to gainful employment because of the Great Recession. So Backpacks to Briefcases is in the public workforce system, we call it an on-the-job training program. In academia, it's a paid internship. It's 12 weeks, 32 hours a week, making $12 an hour, but critically important, in a position that's germane to what you studied in your undergraduate days. And so we've had some outstanding technical assistance from Pat's staff, Kimberly Wheeler and Business Development Services, her entire staff, Crystal Waters. And so we ran that as a pilot with about, it's roughly $5,000 per participant. That's what it costs. We put 200 people through there. It was a wonderful success, about $1 million. High degree of retention, completion, and then gainful employment. Kids came in making $9 or $10 an hour. So if you're unemployed or underemployed, working at the anecdotal of working at Starbucks, nothing wrong with Starbucks, but working at a retail after you've borrowed 30 grand to go to school and you're looking at your loan repayment issues, that may not be enough to actually absorb those expenses. And we're seeing that. $1.5 trillion aggregate education debt. The default rates are going up. The delinquency rates are going up. So that program is a tremendous antidote to address that phenomenon. It needs to be scaled. I think proof of concept was shown in 2015 to 2018, where Duke Energy Foundation gave us $500,000, and we had the same success. One kid was working as a manager at the with the football team at NC State, making $9 or $10 an hour. He's making 60 or 70 grand out at that Research Triangle Park in Underwriters Labs. So we're really lucky to have Research Triangle Park is gonna have a resurgence. That's one thing about COVID-19. We're gonna see more people looking at lower densities, more campus-like settings, and we're blessed out there with a couple hundred companies paying really, really great wages on career paths too. So that's a great program. We'd like to do a 3.0 version of Backpacks for Briefcases if we can find the money.
Great. So let's talk about, you've had a great deal of success with the Life Sciences Economic Development Project. What else can you share about that and the successes that you've had?
Well, again, thank you, Deb. That's a great question. It's important to look at the roots of how you decide to do, focus groups and industry clusters. And the cluster study was Michael Porter. We hired Michael Porter back around 2001, 2002. Governor Hunt had just left the governor's mansion. Mike Easley was there as our governor, and they decided to do an industry cluster analysis. And they showed us that life sciences and biotechnology and pharmaceuticals would be a cluster that could be supported. And that's proven to be the case. So the Golden Leaf Foundation was new then. They bought into that. And it's all aspects. I mean, I work at a land-grant institution. Our chancellor, Randy Woodson, he was provost at Purdue for 25 years, came to NC State. He's been here 10 years now. Land-grant institutions are essential. And we have 100 counties in North Carolina. We have a presence in all 100 counties with cooperative extension. We have a new plant sciences building that, again, is being financed substantially from the Golden Leaf Foundation. But if you look at and I'll quote somebody from UNC Chapel Hill who very sadly succumbed to the Spanish flu in 1918. His name was Edward Kidder Graham. One of his nephews, Frank Porter Graham, was a great leader at UNC Chapel Hill. That's our sister institution. We fight on the football field and basketball court, but we love each other in things what we're talking about: workforce development, education, economic development. And he in his commencement address in 1918 said, "Let the borders of the campus be contiguous with the boundaries of the state." That is what we need to be living. That's an ethos or a value that needs to be embraced. So they don't stop just at those beautiful walls. We're kind of the antithesis of the caricatured ivory tower. You want to be engaged. And Bob Knight has schooled me on this too. He said, we need to actually, with the community college systems are a great model. How can we embrace that commitment and that dedication to being societally relevant? Our young people want to do that. It achieves equity, it achieves diversity. So we need to be more about getting engaged than involved. It's called outreach and engagement in the land-grant lexicon. So they're great models, and you guys do that so well at EQUIS, and a lot of workforce boards do it real well. It's great to hear Ann and Joel allude to that, how important that is.
Well, I have to tell you, I've been schooled by Bob Knight a time or two myself, so we we share in that experience. So if you were to talk to other economic development organizations, which I'm sure you do, and workforce boards in other areas of the country, what advice would you offer them to model programs like the Life Sciences Economic Development Project?
We're fortunate to have great partnerships here because of people like Pat and Andre Pettigrew over in Durham. And so to work collegially and to be part of a team. This all happens only as a team. So we had a couple of successes this year. We had 6 or 7 really great announcements. Hard to believe in the last 10 months. We had Audentes and Grail, 2 great gene therapy companies, come from California. We don't poach companies. A lot of them are just expansion. They may not relocate, but in Grail's case, they're a neighbor of Facebook. they have to compete out there in Silicon Valley. It's expensive to live. It's a great environment, but sometimes you have to think about how can you staff up. And we're a relatively lower tax state, but I'm not casting aspersions to California. It's an unbelievable place. But you mentioned New York, where you come from. Christina Johnson was the dean of our Pratt School of Engineering at Duke. She went from there to be the provost at Johns Hopkins, and now she's head of SUNY. So having academic engagement is critically important too. And our community colleges are a wonderful institutional model for that. In fact, here in North Carolina, a gentleman named Peter Hans, who was the president of the North Carolina Community College System, was just named the president of the UNC system. So there's that integration. It's all about leadership. If you have that leadership, they set the tone. And then the workforce boards, just fit in beautifully. On the Grail recruitment, we had 3, Alamance Community College, Durham Community College, and then Wake Tech, alongside all of those universities that I mentioned, NC Central, Carolina, Duke. And then we'll even go after the Triad and get Wake Forest, because there's 36 private universities in North Carolina. Deb, if you think about this, we have 17 UNC system members. That's about 230,000 students. Add to that the 36 private colleges and another roughly 100,000. That's what the companies are seeking. They're seeking talent. Ron alluded to this yesterday in the discussion about global talent and how you attract people from all over the globe. And that's what people are seeking, our universities to get our students and our graduates to stay here afterwards. Why would they stay? Because there's gainful employment opportunities that are career relevant to what they've studied and what they love. And then making sure we lift all boats. It needs to be much more diversified. And that's been a big theme of the conference. We have to do a better job of making sure that we're demographically engaged across geographically and institutionally with all members of our society. There's a lot of room for improvement there.
Well, and in my opinion, too, North Carolina is an absolute beautiful part of the country. So I think you also are able to entice people with an incredible quality of life there as well. It's just a beautiful place. And the area you're in is a prime example of that. You and I didn't prep on this topic, but I did notice on the website in February, there was an announcement about a pretty sizable DOL grant for apprenticeships for artificial intelligence. Are you involved with it in any way, Tom, or can you share some information about that?
Yeah, I am. We have 10 colleges at NC State, and that was the College of Education with some really dynamic people that Chancellor Woodson brought with him from Purdue. So that's a DOL apprenticeship grant. We're hopeful that we'll get a second phase grant from the National Science Foundation that's not directly related to that, but we have some professors in our College of Humanities and Social Sciences working together. So, and that's roughly about the same amount of money. It's about a $5 million grant. The DOL apprenticeship grant was $6 million. So we've got 36,000 students and about 9,000 employees. And sometimes we have trouble with talking to one another across those departments. And Deb, to that point, interdisciplinary, multi-institutional collaboration is hard, but it's what drives the day in economic development. You have to associate with and collaborate with. Remdesivir was developed by Dr. Barrick over at UNC Chapel Hill. Duke's got a human vaccine institute led by Bart Haynes and Tom Denny. So we've got our BTEC with a 300-liter bioreactor. If we're not working together, we're missing an opportunity. And Ron alluded to this yesterday a little bit about the need to onshore critical industries for cybersecurity reasons. And that could involve not just vaccines and pharmaceuticals, but also a lot of the chips that go into our apparatus for military and defense, run our utility plants. So semiconductors is coming back to the United States too. Again, interdisciplinary, multi-institutional collaboration. And a lot of times that's going to go beyond our state boundaries. We're going to wind up having maybe a dozen or so universities engaged in some of the innovation institutes that President Obama had funded. We've got a couple of those on our campus engineering research centers. So right. It's all about working together for the good of the cause, teamwork.
Excellent. Tom, so as COVID-19 we're living with it, and we're probably going to live with it for quite a while longer. As an economic developer, and when you look at the projects that you have ongoing right now for 2020, And I know those are, you know, code named and you can't give specifics, but what might this whole COVID-19, the entire pandemic issue, mean to some of those projects underway?
Well, that's a good question. I was just talking to an economic developer yesterday with one of those projects, and the cloak and dagger system, you can't divulge the identity of the project, obviously.
Right.
And that's usually driven by the site selection consultants who, you know, with good cause, don't want it to leak out. So, because multiple states are usually under investigation. That Merck plant that I mentioned, they looked at 12 states and 135 cities before they selected Trayburn Corporate Park. So it's highly competitive. You know, we need to be sensitive to the people that are losing jobs and whose jobs may not come back, and look at all of the capacity that we have with WIOA and NEGs to help those individuals. So we're actually starting to see a lot of interest in micropolitan areas and more rural areas, somewhat analogous to the Research Triangle Park, which is 7,500 acres and low density because of restrictive covenants. But actually, people are starting to say, maybe we don't want high density in central business districts. Maybe we want to, you know, get out a little bit farther away. And that brings up a phenomenon that I talked to Bob Knight about this a lot. In economic development, there's one jurisdictional winner. That is the county or the city where the company decided to invest their capital. They get the property taxes. That's great. But if you think about it, the jobs go to residents, AKA voters, of multiple jurisdictions. So workforce development boards can all celebrate that win because they can be involved if we're collaborating and coordinating. There was a statement made by a friend of mine, Vice President of Government Affairs with Biogen the other day on a Zoom call. They're in Research Triangle Park. It's Biogen. They're in Massachusetts, national headquarters. A lot of research and development here. They have employees who live in 27 different counties in North Carolina.
Wow.
They commute from Pinehurst. They come down from Virginia. They come east. So that's an important phenomenon. When you get a couple thousand jobs created in a jurisdiction, which entities are coordinating with their workforce boards to capture that market share? And that's what economic development is all about. So we're starting to see that push out a little bit more to more decentralized areas. That may be a good thing to help address rural poverty. So more to come.
And absolutely. And, you know, I'm sure, I know without question that economic developers, just like workforce developers, are looking at this situation we're in right now, which encompasses the pandemic, fights for racial justice and racial equity, and all that's happening in our world, and thinking about, and Karen Norrington-Reed used this term with us, the pivot, and looking for, okay, we were focused over here, but based on the current situation, we think there's greater opportunity or new additional opportunity over here for us to really pivot and create growth for our region. You guys had, I'm sure, those very same conversations?
We have, and you have to be sensitive on our sector strategies and looking at career pathways. Things change rapidly. I mean, and to be able to pivot, you have to be ready. You have to be prepared. To use sports analogies, right? You have to be well trained, and you have to be paying attention. And it's really about leadership too. I wanted to read a quote. There's an NC State graduate named Bill Friday who was the head of our UNC system, and he when he was the head of the UNC system, he insisted that all 17 members be engaged. Part of that system is the School of Science and Mathematics, maybe the best public high school in America. And that looks like North Carolina. It's 600 or 700 kids. We're opening a Western campus. Trying to make sure that our young people, and we're sharing that information about those economic development transitions, the metamorphosis, because perhaps some of those folks don't have parents that are engaged in those cutting edge enterprises. And that's what we're looking at, like, with digital inclusion, right? It's been alluded to a lot here about the fact that, the mismatch that we have and the economic mobility challenges and the income inequality. I mean, it's really hard if you don't have broadband, accessibility, and it's not reliable and it's not affordable. That was mentioned yesterday. But here's what Friday said in 1998. NC State grad, the head of the UNC system. Every morning, 1 million North Carolinians get up and go to work for wages which leave them below the poverty line so that they can pay taxes that finance the education you receive at Carolina. This was the commencement address. Your job is to figure out how you're going to pay them back. How good is that?
Mm-hmm.
So, and that captures what we're going through now as a society, the economic justice, social justice, the things that are we really doing enough to make sure that everyone is, captured that spirit? I mean, it sounds like an anachronism today, but if you go back to John F. Kennedy's, inaugural address, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. It's almost like, that it's hard to believe that we've lost that value. We got to put that back and make sure that we practice it, not just preach it. Our motto at NC State is think and do. We have to make sure that we're doing as well as thinking. So, long answer to a good question.
No, but excellent way to close this out, Tom. Thank you for that, and thanks for this conversation. And Tom, thanks for all your dedication to workforce development, and for being one of those economic developers that understands that workforce development is economic development, and that strong partnerships there benefit everyone. So Tom, thank you again for joining us. I look forward to seeing you in person, hopefully in the not too distant future, and also hearing about this COVID-19 vaccine to come out of the Triangle region. So can't wait to get that news. I know, fingers crossed. So good luck. Thank you, Tom. Have a great rest of the
Thanks
forum.
so much. And David Muir and Nora O'Donnell ought to watch themselves. You're awfully good at this.
Yes, all right. I don't think they're in any danger, but thank you. All right, Tom, thanks.